Today on Dr. Phil.
Kayla Phillips says she was stopped after buying a $2,500 handbag.
I felt like a criminal.
You believe this was racial profiling?
Absolutely.
The cop pulled up behind us, and he reached for his gun.
I'm like, sir, we're actors. We're not criminals.
He said, are you doing this because we're black? A couple seconds later, he was handcuffing Dennis.
You stop me, handcuff me, you better, by God, have a good reason. Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
I hate to see people suffering, and you've heard long enough.
Stand by, Dr. Phil.
I'm going to get you the help that you need.
In 5, 4,
This is going to be a changing day in your life.
Go, Dr. Phil.
How you doing? Hey, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, here's a question. Do you clutch your bag or grab your wallet when you see someone whose skin might be darker than yours? Or who is dressed a little too urban for your comfort? Do you look sideways at fellow flyers who appear to be of a different descent if you're on an airline? Well, it's all about two words today that many argue are behind the most humiliating and outrageous headlines in the news recently. We're talking about racial profiling. Now, I bet if I ask everyone in the audience and viewers at home who are watching and tweeting right now what they think of this term, I might get the politically correct response. It shouldn't happen. But is that how you really feel? Or do you secretly profile on a daily basis? All I know is some very high-profile stores are under fire right now for incidents involving shoppers of a certain race. Take a look.
Some are calling it the shop and frisk scandal.
Two giant names in upscale retail, both rocked by allegations of racial profiling.
African-American shoppers being treated with suspicion.
Treated like shoplifters, they say, because of their skin color.
This 19-year-old college student was stopped outside the store minutes after buying an expensive belt. And this 21-year-old woman was detained after she bought a $2,500 handbag.
I felt like a criminal.
Hollywood actor Robert Brown bought a $1,300 watch inside the iconic Macy's store. After he made the purchase, he says he was surrounded by undercover cops.
All I kept hearing was, it's a fake card, you're going to jail.
The allegations are echoes of Oprah Winfrey's recent run-in at an upscale boutique in Switzerland. She says she was the victim of racial profiling when a shop clerk refused to show her a $38,000 Tom Ford handbag.
You should be able to go in a store looking like whatever you look like and say, I'd like to see this.
After the George Zimmerman verdict, President Obama referred to the shopping while black phenomenon.
There are very few African-American men in this country who haven't had the experience of being followed when they were shopping in a department store. That includes me.
We have viewers on Polycom who can't wait to weigh in, and Twitter is on fire with comments already, and we just started the show. If you'd like to join the discussion, you can tweet me now at Dr. Phil, #race. But first, 22-year-old Kayla's story made national headlines after she was accused by 4 plainclothes officers who approached her outside of a high-end department store in New York City. Take a look.
Consumers are reconsidering where to swipe their cards after a series of complaints from shoppers that they've been racially profiled.
21-year-old nursing student Kayla Phillips says she was stopped after buying a $2,500 handbag from Barney's.
I was embarrassed, humiliated. I felt like a criminal.
Shoppers were detained without merit. All tell similar stories. All are African American.
This photo shows some prominent civil rights leaders questioning Barney's New York CEO Mark Lee.
No individual should go through the unacceptable experiences described by Trayon Christian and Kayla Phillips in recent media reports.
Rapper Jay-Z is caught up in the controversy as well. He has a clothing line set to debut at Barney's next month. Some shoppers are now calling on him to pull the line.
New York State's Attorney General is investigating the allegations of racial profiling at Barney's.
Well, here's more of what Kayla has to say.
Racial profiling does exist. I went through it. That had to be the most embarrassing low point in my life. When I was in the store, everything was pretty normal. I bought the Celine bag. I left Barney's. I headed toward 59th and Lexington, where I took the 4 train to head back to Brooklyn. 2 undercover officers approached me. One grabbed me by my hand. 2 other undercover officers came across, blocked my entrance, blocked the exit. They started to interrogate me. How can I afford the bag I was wearing, which was a Chanel bag? I told them that it was my mom's bag. The undercover officer asked me, how did I purchase my Barney's bag? And I told her I used my debit card. She then asked me to see it. I pulled out my temporary card, which she told me that's not the card you use. I then looked down and it was the wrong one. The first thought in my head was Barney's had to have sent them after me. At this point, I'm feeling very scared. I don't know what to do. I'm humiliated with all these eyes watching me. They really never gave me a complete explanation. I just remember they said to me, if someone was using your information, you would want us to stop them. I felt very insulted, low. I felt like just because of my skin color, I don't deserve to buy that expensive bag. My self-esteem went from 100 to 0 after that.
Well, Kayla's mother, Wendy, was instrumental in getting her daughter's case heard publicly. Here's what she has to say.
The way that the officers treated Kayla enraged me. I was very upset. There's no reason why she should have been treated that way. I wish that I was there. I definitely feel that Kayla was targeted. I feel that Kayla was targeted because she was an African-American young woman. That bag is purchased every day. Why her? Why was she approached? The whole situation makes me angry. Barney's is not taking the situation seriously enough. No one wants to take responsibility, and no one wants to apologize.
Well, Kayla and her mother, Wendy, are joining us via satellite from New York City, so I welcome the two of you. When you pulled out your debit card, you gave them the one that wasn't activated yet. You had the other one in your purse, which you then produced. But that officer said, this is not the card you used. How did they know that? How did they know that if they weren't in the store watching on the cameras or involved with Barney's internal security? How did they know that wasn't the card you used?
Exactly. That's what I want to know, Dr. Phil, because, you know, I didn't see any of those 4 undercover officers in Barney's with me or around me while I was making my purchase.
All right, Wendy, you called security at Barney's. Were they apologetic? Did they know anything about it? What was their attitude?
Pretty much their attitude was that they had no involvement in the incident, so, you know, I'm to take it up with NYPD.
You two believe clearly that this was racial profiling, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I want to add someone to the conversation here. Former national chairman of the conservative black think tank and author of Random Rants, Michael Massey says he does not believe there is a pandemic of racial profiling. Michael, what do you mean nobody in their right mind would racially profile in 2013?
At the mere suggestion, hint, or possibility that someone has been detained or looked at based on race, color of skin, triggers a series of events that no business owner, no police department in their right mind wants to go through.
I spent 20 years on LAPD from 1980 to 2000, and I appreciate this gentleman's perspective, but what he has not been is a police officer. And so I can tell you without a doubt that officers routinely stop people and manufacture PC to fit the circumstance. And that's exactly what happened in this instance. I am not talking about something anecdotally. I'm not talking about something that I've heard. I'm talking about something that I've been a witness to and a victim of as a police officer and as a black woman.
Well, first of all...
But let me say this, and I just have to say this. Every barrel can have some bad apples. There's no question about it. And I've got to tell you, I think in large part, these are very dedicated, sincere men and women who put themselves in harm's way and stand in the gap for all of us, and I appreciate them. Now, the audience has a chance to participate in the show via audience polling response system. Remember that all results are anonymous, so you can answer this question honestly. It's under your chair, and here's the question. Do you feel Kayla was a victim of racial profiling? And it's A, yes, and B, no. Okay, here's the response. 78% say yes, she was profiled, and 22% say no. So most of you feel that she was profiled. Now, we have a full statement from Barney's New York on our website on drphil.com. All right, we've got to move on. I want to thank Kayla and Wendy for helping with the story. I think it raises awareness and makes people think about this. Next, you're going to remember my next guest is the best friend of the popular 80s TV character Punky Brewster. You're going to find out why she and her boyfriend were handcuffed and searched by a police officer after they say they were accused of illegally picking cotton. We'll be right back.
Next thing I know, I see the cop pull up.
He opened up my bag and he said, "Come here, this is marijuana right here." And I was like, "That's not marijuana, that's a tea bag."
He reached for his gun and told me to get back in the car. I threw my hands up in the air and was like, whoa.
This former child star and her actor boyfriend recently made headlines after they say a weekend getaway down south ended up with them being harassed by a police officer, handcuffed and falsely accused of having drugs and illegally picking cotton.
Police stop involving two celebrities goes viral. Were they the victims of racial profiling?
They were on a romantic getaway when a sightseeing stop led to some very unwelcome attention from the police. Johnson and White say they were improperly stopped by police, put in handcuffs, and harshly questioned about drugs and money. They claim the incident took place because of their race. I have to ask, when all of this was happening, was there a point where you said, okay, we're being profiled here?
I actually asked him when I was still seated in the car after he told me that I did not have a warrant for my arrest, and he started asking me about drugs for the third time. I said, "Are you doing this because we're black?" And the next thing I knew, he was handcuffing Dennis.
Here's more of what Cherry and Dennis have to say.
Dennis and I were definitely racially profiled by the police in South Carolina.
We were driving to Myrtle Beach for a vacation. We taught acting class the previous day, and then we saw cotton fields. Cherry has never seen cotton fields before, so I obliged her. We pulled over.
Next thing I know, I see the cop pull up. I walked up to the officer and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to pull over and take some pictures." Well, he reached for his gun and told me to get back in the car. I threw my hands up in the air and was like, whoa.
Told us to sit in the car. He checked my license. He came back, pulled me out the car. He left me, went and talked to her.
I said, "Excuse me, are you doing this because we're black?" It was like that look that your father gives you when you know that you've done something wrong. That was the look he gave me for asking the question. Moments later, I saw him putting on gloves and he was handcuffing Dennis.
I'm like, "Why are you handcuffing me?" He said, "Because I can." So he pulled her out the car. He said, "What's your probable cause?" He said, "You might have a dead body in the car." I'm like, "Sir, we're actors, we're not criminals."
I asked, "Why are you handcuffing me?" He told me, "I'm handcuffing you for my safety." At that point, I didn't have any rights.
I felt emasculated because I couldn't protect her. I think that when he initially stopped us, he was hoping to find something, and when he didn't, he was trying to trip us up so that he could justify the predicament he put us in, but to no avail. He said, "Oh, I can arrest you guys for trespassing and petty larceny." Like, petty larceny? You guys stole cotton? Like, we didn't steal any cotton. He opened up my bag and he said, "Come here, this is marijuana right here." And I was like, "That's not marijuana, that's a tea bag." So he's like, "Well, I have ways of testing it." I was like, "Well, do as you will." So he smells it and he said, "Oh yeah, it is tea." I'm like, duh.
He tried to provoke us to the very end. I put my hand up so that he could unhandcuff my right arm, and he got right in my personal space in my face and stared at me. I was upset, angry, and hurt.
I felt totally helpless.
We were on the side of the road for about an hour in handcuffs, so we were definitely guilty until proven innocent.
Okay, well, I'm glad y'all are here. I wish we were talking about something different. But
Me too.
I'm glad you're here. And it scares me that you guys are in the middle of nowhere. And somebody is stopping you. Well, they didn't even stop you. You were stopped and taking pictures and looking around, right?
Yeah, we stopped because my oil light came on a rental car, and she's never seen cotton. So I grew up in North Carolina, so like I've seen it all the time. So we went to take pictures, and we stopped. We was there for about 5 to 7 minutes, walking back to the car. The cop pulled up behind us, and he reached for his gun. And she put her hands up. We got in the car. He started asking us questions, you know, where are we going? Where are we from? He asked me, how do I know her? How long have we been dating? You know, and it was just, I feel like he was trying to bait me to do something unnecessary. But I was very respectful because I knew we didn't do anything wrong. We went back to the car, took her driver's license, came back and said she had a warrant for her arrest.
And I told him, I don't have a warrant for my arrest. I've never done anything wrong. He went back to his car. He came back and said, you don't have a warrant for your arrest. I looked at him and said, I know. And then he asked me to get out of the car. He took me in the front of the car, and he started asking me, well, do you have marijuana? Because if you do, I'll write you a citation, and I'll let you go. I said, no, I don't have drugs. Then he went on to ask me if I had cocaine. Then he asked me if I had crack. And he asked me if I had any other sort of drugs. And I said, no, sir, I might have a Midol. I don't have anything else. He told me I could go back and get in the car. And that's when everything turned for the worse. I looked at him and I said, sir, can I ask you a question? And he said, yes. I said, I come from a cop family. My aunt's a cop, my uncle's a cop, my little brother's a police officer. I don't understand why you're doing this. Are you doing this because we're black? He tapped on the window and walked in the back of the car. I turned around and looked, and he was putting on black leather gloves. A couple seconds later, he was handcuffing Dennis.
It was hard for me because, I mean, I'm black, I'm a young black male. I've been racially profiled before, but it was a different story in this situation because I felt responsible for her.
I can just tell you from a psychological perspective, the last thing you want to do is challenge the authority of someone that has authority and a gun.
Yes.
Discretion's the better part of valor.
Yeah.
Trust me, you did exactly the right thing. But all right, we got to take a quick break. Dennis says he does feel emasculated as a result of his alleged racial profiling experience, but we're going to talk to one critic who claims Dennis and Cherry were not racially profiled. They do not understand what is involved in police work. We'll be right back.
Before this incident, I knew there was racial profiling. I've been a victim of it, but this showed how prevalent it is. I felt raped. I've never been raped, but I felt violated. I was powerless, and there was nothing I could do.
Well, that was Dennis talking about his reaction to the police after he was allegedly a victim of racial profiling. Now, Cherry and Dennis say their romantic getaway turned into a nightmare after they say a police officer harassed them, handcuffed them on the side of the road, essentially for stopping to take pictures of a cotton field. Now, conservative podcast host Ari David says racial profiling is in fact a necessary evil and that they're just confusing this with police work. Ari, thanks for being here, number one.
Thank you, Doctor.
What do you say?
Can you two understand why a policeman would get suspicious or defensive seeing people in the middle of nowhere and perhaps have an understanding for the kind of dangerous people policemen deal with on a daily basis?
Taking pictures. When I told him as soon as I saw him, hello, sir, I'm sorry, I've never seen
Do
cotton
criminals answer policemen honestly all the time?
Policeman never asked me anything. I volunteered, sir.
So, I pay taxes. You pay taxes, right?
Yes.
I should be responsible.
Too many. Too much.
I should be allowed to go anywhere I want to on this planet.
Not necessarily if it's, not if it's on private property or if the policeman had suspicion that you had entered the cotton field, which was private property or perhaps private property in the owner.
Let's be commonsensical here. What's somebody going to steal in a cotton field?
Cotton.
They checked them out, and they didn't have any cotton on them except maybe the shirt they were wearing, and that was already...
And they let these people go. Were you ever arrested? Were you ever taken to the station or detained for...
I was detained against my will.
On the side of the road?
On the side of the road. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't late at night.
And
it wasn't
after
deep.
you were detained, you were let go after the police...
So that's okay?
There was no reasonable...
Cheryl.
There was no reason that make sense for that officer to do what he did beyond, oh, you're taking pictures of cotton, have at it, enjoy your day. Most people don't understand that when an officer stops you, we respect authority. And so when an officer stops you and says, I want to engage you in a conversation, you do for a moment. But then when that conversation becomes, how long have you known her, where are you going, what color underwear are you wearing, now you're out of line. But I can't, as a civilian, go there with an officer. I'm required to answer those questions because in LA, we have a thing called contempt of cop. And if you don't go along with what they're saying and what they're doing, then they will do exactly what this officer was trying to do, which was create that PC that I've been talking about, because you have got to have PC. He didn't stop them because of a traffic violation, which then caused him to ask a litany of other questions. He came upon them in the midst of doing what they were doing legally, lawfully, and reasonably. And then he tried to create a situation. And understand, young man, that you did exactly what you were supposed to have done. Because had you done anything different, I promise you, you would have gone to jail that night.
Yeah. Okay, now when you say PC, you mean probable cause.
Probable cause. You must have probable cause. And I don't get to, as a police officer, just cuff people because you scare me. That's why I go to a police academy and get training for 6 months. That's why I spend 18 months in the field with a training officer who teaches me how to conduct myself. So I don't get to just look at you and say, you scared me, and now I want to put you in handcuffs.
We've been conditioned to think that if you don't go to jail, woo, you got off safely.
You did.
But anytime you've been detained incorrectly is wrong.
Ari, I'm sorry, but you stopped me alongside the road, handcuffed me and detained me for an hour. You better, by God, have a good attorney and a good reason. All right, we reached out to the Marion County Sheriff's Department several times. As of tape time, they were unable to give us a statement. I want the audience to participate in the show, as I said. I want you to pick up your response device. Do you feel that Cherry and Dennis are being too sensitive about their experience in South Carolina? 87% no. They do not feel you are being too sensitive about your situation. And he didn't vote, so he's not in the 13%. All right. All right. We're going to talk to a former minor league baseball player who was shot point blank in the chest in his parents' driveway, and he survived. He claimed to have been a victim of racial profiling and sued. You may be surprised what happens next. We're going to add him to the conversation and hear more from these folks as well. We'll be right back. Robbie planned to follow in his father's famous footsteps and become a Major League Baseball player until a bullet fired from a police officer's gun ripped through his chest and destroyed his dream. Now, the shooting happened in his parents' driveway in an affluent neighborhood in Texas. Not only did it make headlines, but it also enraged a nation.
It was a bizarre series of events.
He didn't even put on his lights.
20-year-old Anthony Cooper says he and Robert Tolan were driving home from Jack in the Box around 2:30 this morning. A policeman approached them in his driveway.
He came with us with a gun.
It was a Bel Air PD sergeant, 10 years on the force, and apparently convinced he was staring at two suspects getting out of a stolen SUV.
The vehicle, it turned out not to be stolen. Why they thought it was stolen, how they got a stolen report, I'm not clear yet.
The SUV wasn't stolen, and when the victim's mom came outside, there was confusion and an argument.
While he's on the ground, he goes in and say, "What are you doing with my mom?" Bam.
It appears up to 3 shots were fired by that single sergeant in rapid succession. 2 hit the house. 1 hit 23-year-old Robert Tolan, son of former pro ball player Bobby Tolan.
He was trying to pursue a career in baseball like I did.
Robbie and his parents feel like they were treated like criminals simply because of the color of their skin.
The officer approached us as we were approaching the front door. He just came out of the darkness with a gun and flashlight drawn. Did not announce himself, told us to get on the ground. We didn't do anything, so we're like, you know, get on the ground for what? And he said, I'm not going to say it again, get on the ground.
We were right in the kitchen. We were in our pajamas. Then we heard Robbie say, "What are you talking about? That's my car." We both went to the door. I think my husband went out the door first.
I went outside to see why they were arguing, and when I opened up the door, I was blinded by the flashlight. No one said, "This is the police."
I heard Robbie say, they say I stole a car.
My dad said, no, that has to be a mistake. That's my son, that's his car, this is our house. At that point, the officer walked my dad over at gunpoint to search him.
He made me put my hands up and spread eagle. And then he asked me if I had any weapons on me. And I said, no, I don't have any weapons.
Once my mom saw things were taking a turn for the worse, she started to be a little more vocal.
I said, this is a big mistake. And then the next thing I heard someone come behind me and say, get against the wall.
Another officer walked over to my mom and grabbed her and threw her up against the garage door. I wasn't too happy about seeing my mom treated like that. I pushed myself up and turned around and I said, get your hands off my mom. After that, the officer didn't say a word. He just drew his gun and shot me. I stayed in the hospital about a month.
The officer that shot my son was indicted, and we went to trial, and then he was acquitted.
I was mad as hell. You have several errors in judgment that led to me being shot and, fighting for my life, and the people responsible weren't held accountable.
So they approached you, as it turns out, because they thought you had stolen a car.
Mm-hmm.
And whose car was it?
It's mine.
It was your car?
Yes, my name was on it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently they had put in a wrong ID number or vehicle identification number?
I think, as it turned out, they put one wrong digit in.
And it came up stolen?
Came up stolen.
But it wasn't. Now, you two, you come out because why? What caused you to come out of the house?
Well, I heard Robbie say, this is my car. And I thought he was talking to Anthony, like Anthony wanted to use the car and go someplace else. So I came out the house to break up their little argument, him and Anthony. And when I came out the house, a cop, I didn't know he was a cop either. He didn't identify himself. I came out and Robbie said, they said we stole a car. I said, this is my house, this is my son, it's his car. I got the flashlight in my face, and he points me, takes me at gunpoint to my Suburban in the driveway. And then he makes me spread eagle and asks me, do I have any weapons? And I'm looking to my right, because he's on my right side. The next thing I heard was a gunshot. And then he forced me by taking me over to a police car and put me in the back of this police car.
Okay. And where were you when this was happening?
When the boys were on the ground, Bobby was spread eagle against the Suburban, I was talking to that officer that had the gun pointed at them. And I really felt at that time like they were just harassing them because they were black. And I said, this is a terrible mistake. We've lived here 15 years. And I felt they knew us. We were only blacks on our block. They knew who we were.
The black population in Bel Air is less than 2%. So
They know where the blacks
they know where the blacks live in the neighborhood.
We weren't hiding. We have black people at our house. We're black. We go to the grocery store. We go to the bank. We jog in our neighborhood. We do the same thing everybody else does. They knew who we were. He'd had that car 4 years.
And I was not arrested. I'm glad you made that point. I was not arrested. But I was shot. I have lasting effects. And for you to tell me to get over it, it's
I'm
insulting.
not telling you to get over
I'm speaking.
it. You were shot.
You told them to get over it.
They weren't shot.
You said you would
It
get
does
over
not
it and
matter.
move on.
It doesn't matter to the degree of racial profiling. Racial profiling is racial profiling. The comments you made are ignorant and insulting.
I don't think you were racially profiled. You don't think I was racially profiled.
Robbie is not only carrying the bullet lodged in his liver to this day because they can't remove it because it's just too high risk. He's also carrying anxiety and anger. That's not a good combination. We're going to talk about this and more when we come back.
I was laying there in pain, and I couldn't believe what happened. It was surreal. I stuck my hand under my shirt and pulled it out, and it was covered in blood, and I was just like, oh, man. I just knew I was going to die.
It's been 5 years since Robbie was shot in the chest by a police officer, leaving him with a collapsed lung and a bullet lodged in his liver. The family says they are still fighting for justice after losing 2 court cases against the police department for racial profiling. We did contact Lieutenant Jeff Cotton, and he gave us the following statement. The Tolan case is on appeal in the federal courts. I am not able to comment on the case at this time. Our Twitter is just blowing up as we're talking about this. Flyaway XO tweeted, as African Americans, we tend to fulfill the stereotypes we're given. Then we want to get mad at these things. Shalina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Phil.
Hi, how are you? Now, you're the one that sent the tweet, right?
Right.
All right, tell me what you mean.
First of all, I want to start out by saying I'm sorry and I'm hurt by what decent African Americans have to go through due to the bad batch of African Americans that act ignorant. By that tweet, I mean we have this batch of African Americans who steal, who promote, stealing, doing drugs, selling cocaine, shooting. Look at Chicago. And that becomes the face of our whole community, unfortunately. And then you got people like Sherry and her husband and this young man who got shot for no reason, who carried themselves decently, having to reap what these ignorant African Americans sow. And that's what I mean. We need a change. We need a makeover as African Americans. And that's my take on that.
All right. Thank you, Shalina. We really appreciate your comment. Is it possible that this was just really bad police work?
It's bad training, Dr. Phil, because we have police officers in our family that's related to us. And they told us, I believe there was like 5 different steps they have to go before they use deadly force. He went right to deadly force. He had a taser. At least taser my son, don't try to kill him.
Right.
And then they take his cell phone and stuff and run a background check on him. And they know this after they found out the vehicle was stolen.
The audience has a chance to participate in the show via an audience polling response system. Now remember that all results are anonymous, so answer this question honestly. Do you feel Robbie was a victim of racial profiling? A for yes, B for no. 74% of you say yes, 26% of you say no. It just seems to me that commonsensically, particularly if you've got training and this was a veteran police officer, you see this distinguished gentleman come out of his house in his pajamas. You see this lovely woman come out of her house. It just doesn't seem like you're in Thug Central. And I think at that point you would be looking to de-escalate the situation as opposed to throwing this woman up against the garage door. I don't know. I wasn't there, but it just seems to me like that's just really poor work. From shopping to driving to standing in your driveway, everyone has an opinion about what happened to our guest today. This show's far from over. We'll be right back.
I've seen an African American walk in a store and be targeted because of the color of their skin. I've watched them be followed. We are ignorant to believe that targeting race over criminality and behaviors is effective, because it's not.
I think it should be called behavioral profiling more than racial profiling. I worked in retail many years. We were actually told to watch for rich-looking white women with extra large purses. So that's not necessarily racial profiling as much as it is behavioral profiling.
My take on it is that African Americans are responsible for the racial profiling going on right now in America. I believe that if we conducted ourselves like legit Americans, like logical Americans, like Americans who had some sort of an education, maybe a lot more people would feel safe around us.
Okay, as I say, we've been getting lots of tweets, and we're talking about racial profiling. Janet Pfeiffer 1 here says, stats don't lie. More crimes are committed by certain groups than others. Stop committing crimes, and the reputation improves. And we've got Healed Hearts here, says racial profiling definitely exists, although some would justify by saying it was a cop doing their job. So it's just interesting to me when you look at these. At Eating to Heaven says racial profiling is critical in law enforcement and too often abused. We can keep going. After 9/11, I started looking at people from the Middle East differently. I hate that. I was never like that before. That's from @Tina M. Cummings. Marion Greer says racial profiling is flawed, but it is a good deterrent to crime. So she actually thinks this is a necessary evil that we live with. Polychick AM tweeted, bad guys come in all colors. If anyone of any race is acting strange, better safe than sorry beats the PC version, just sorry. So this is Anne Marie. Anne Marie, tell me a little more about what you mean here.
Crazy comes in all colors. If I were walking down a dark alley, I don't know why I would ever be doing that, and I saw you, Dr. Phil, I would assess the situation. Why is Dr. Phil in a dark alley? Is this safe for me? I probably, no offense, I would probably turn around. You can't be too safe in America 2013. Everyone has the potential of hurting you.
Now, you say you worked in a department store, right?
I did, back in my single mom days, yes.
And they told you to look for exactly the opposite. They told you to watch affluent-looking white women with big bags.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, almost everyone in the store I worked in looked exactly like that. And but I guess statistically, a lot of bored rich housewives were doing the 5-finger discount thing.
Gotcha. All right, earlier we spoke about Kayla's case against Barney's. Criminal and civil attorney Kareem Vessup is representing Kayla. Kareem, what can you add to this?
The one thing I would caution people when they take a position about racial profiling is to first realize that it's all about the assumptions that people make about others. We all make assumptions, but when your behavior then is dictated by your assumptions, that's when we run into the risk of having excesses like what happened with Kayla and all of the victims that have been on the show today. And that's the concern.
You know, one of the things that I'm concerned about and that I've spent time studying over the years is something that's referred to as hidden bias or implicit bias. This is a mental attitude towards a person, thing, or a group that a person holds at an unconscious level. And think about this. This is often at variance with consciously held or expressed beliefs, and it may result in unintended discrimination. So what I mean is there are people that will say, no, I don't like that, don't want bias, don't want profiling, don't want this or that. But there is a mental residue at an unconscious level that causes there to be, to treat people differently. For example, one study shows that if you were interviewing applicants for a job, white interviewers tended to sit further away from black applicants than non-black applicants. And those interviews tended to be 25% shorter. We'll be right back. How do you feel when you have been rejected in the court system twice, when you are operating a vehicle that you own lawfully on streets that you pay taxes for, going to a house where you live and you get shot? And basically, your own insurance has to pay for it.
Right.
And you've had no redress whatsoever from any source, correct?
Right.
Have you ever had an apology?
No, of course not.
No apology. No compensation for loss.
Dr. Phil, the judge that dismissed our civil case also ordered that we pay the police officer who shot him. We had to pay his court fees, almost $7,000.
And you know what? And also at one point, They must have felt that they were going to lose because they had a meeting with our attorneys to have a settlement case. They wanted to settle with us and pay us money, a settlement hearing. And the amount of money that they offered, we just walked out of the room.
Cherry, you and Dennis, you haven't received an apology
No.
either. Well, you did from the governor.
From the governor, but
not
not the police.
from the officer or the police department.
No, I couldn't even get them to call me back.
Well, what we decided to do, because of the situation, we started a foundation called themorph.org, the Movement Opposing Racial Profiling and Harassment, because it's not atypical for racial profiling. A lot of people are being racially profiled. We get emails and calls all the time, so there has to be something done about this. Yeah. So we didn't plan on having this situation, but we feel like now it's responsibility to try and help and change.
My ultimate goal is some kind of sensitivity training within the police departments.
Yeah. I do want to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to Cheryl Dorsey, thank you for weighing in. Michael Massey, thank you. Ari David, thanks for being here and talking about what you've had to say. And thanks for being here, everybody. So long.